Now, what I want to do with this video is to take a few minutes to step back and look at the current situation at Lucasfilm, and mainly with Kathleen Kennedy, who is of course the president of Lucasfilm, and to ask what happens next with her, keeping in mind that she has only 6 months left on her current contract, and we've heard nothing so far about renewals, extensions, or anything like that. And just know ahead of time, I'm not claiming to be an expert in these matters when it comes to the inner workings of these companies or corporations, nor do I have insider or leaked information about what's going on behind the scenes. I'm just going to look at this thing from all sides and as rationally and as logically as I can. And if you're wondering what I'm even talking about right now, it's that since Gina Carano, who played Cara Dune on The Mandalorian, was let go, and I say let go and not fired because technically, as I understand it, she just didn't have her contract renewed. Anyways, since it was announced that she was being let go, that she wouldn't be a part of any future Lucasfilm projects because of posts or remarks she made on social media that were deemed hateful essentially, there's been a storm of backlash against Disney, Lucasfilm, and especially Kennedy, who many believe is directly responsible for letting Carano go, though, to be fair, we have no confirmation regarding just who made the actual decision. And though you can agree or disagree with what happened to Gina Carano, everyone is free to make up their own mind. No matter how you feel, though, or where you stand, it cannot be denied that there are many fans, a great many, and even those outside the fandom, who think what happened to Gina Carano was wrong and are speaking out against it in every way they possibly can, including doing things like downvoting and ratioing any new video put up by the official Star Wars channel, even those that really have nothing to do with the situation. There was also a video for the Oscars that Kennedy herself was in that got posted days after Carano was let go, that got ratioed so bad that eventually they just turned off the likes and dislikes and the comments as well. And this is all being done in the hopes of getting Kennedy fired, of course. And though some of you might not like what I'm about to say here, and I ask you to hear me out first, but all of this backlash against her might actually end up having the opposite effect. It might end up helping her keep her job. Because just days ago now, Bob Chapek, CEO of Disney, had nothing but good things to say about Kennedy, nothing but praise for her, as well as for Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios. He basically called her a genius and said she was an absolute treasure. And of course, a lot of people, those calling for her firing, got really angry over this. Problem is, I honestly don't know what anyone expected Chapek to say about her, given the current situation. Or maybe I should say, yes, I know what some wanted him to say. I know some wanted him to speak out against Kennedy and to condemn her and her actions and to say she's going to be fired. But the simple truth is Kennedy is never going to be fired. Never. Short of some sort of major scandal coming out about her that everyone agrees is appalling, Disney will never risk the media and social media backlash that would come from firing a woman in such a prominent position, especially because of the cries of a fan base or portion of a fan base that is deemed quote-unquote toxic and hateful. In my opinion, what Chapek said means little or nothing one way or another. We can't take much of anything away from it because he's not going to show his real hand here. He's not an idiot. You don't become CEO of Disney by being stupid and not knowing how to play the game. Now sure, it sounds like a heck of an endorsement, and there's of course a chance that it is. But it could also be the words of a man who knows Kennedy will be gone in 6 months when her contract is up, and he wants this parting to be as smooth as possible to avoid the aforementioned backlash from media and social media. As I've said many times before, when Kennedy eventually leaves Lucasfilm, it will be on her terms. It will be played as her choosing to walk away from the company, no matter what happened or may happen behind the scenes to bring it on, even if she is all but being forced out. Kennedy will be praised by Disney for all she's done, for the impossible task of leading Star Wars absent its creator George Lucas, and Kennedy will say how it was the opportunity of a lifetime, it was an honor, and that she's proud to carry on, or was proud to carry on, the legacy of Lucas, but that now it's time for someone else to pick it up and run with it, to carry it into the future. So again, don't read too much into what Chapek said. There's no way Disney ever fires her or comes out and says they're choosing not to renew her contract, even if that's what they're planning to do or what they're trying to get Kennedy to agree to walk away peacefully, I mean. And maybe the sad irony of this whole situation, that if Kennedy really does want to stay, she could use this Carano firing as a leverage against them. She could say to Disney that she's not going to play nice and that they have to come out and say that they're not renewing her contract. And no matter what reasoning Disney then gives for letting her go, even if they present it as a good, sound business decision, which I believe it is, everyone in the media, hungry for a story that'll get them clicks, will look at this current backlash to Carano being fired and say that Disney is trying to quell the uprising in their fan base by letting Kennedy go. They're placating, again, the quote-unquote toxic fans. It simply will not matter that there are good reasons to let her go, the main one being the steady decline of box office revenue when it comes to the films. She took arguably the most anticipated trilogy of movies in history, the sequel trilogy of course, and made less and less with each installment of it. Then there was also Solo actually losing money at the box office, which has now led to an extended break in Star Wars films, which you know is not something Disney is very happy about. They no doubt thought they'd be able to crank out at least one Star Wars film a year, if not more, until the end of time, essentially. And really, they should be able to do that. One movie a year is not hard for a franchise like Star Wars to maintain and pull off, especially when you look at Marvel or the MCU, putting out up to 3 movies per year at times, and they're actually having a total of 4 movies coming out in the second half of this year alone. And yes, if we're going to be fair, we should look at the success of The Mandalorian and of Clone Wars Season 7 on Disney+, which happened under Kennedy's leadership. There's also an exciting slate of upcoming shows on the streaming service. So again, to be fair, if we're going to fault her for putting the wrong people in place for the sequels, we should give her credit for putting the right people in place for those shows, or recognizing she had the right people right under her nose the whole time, like Dave Filoni, for example. But that said, I'd argue getting the sequels wrong was a much, much bigger mistake than getting the Mandalorian right was a success. In my opinion, or from the fan perspective, there was nothing she or Lucasfilm as a whole needed to get right more than those movies, more than the sequel trilogy. That more than anything else was the direct continuation of the story and work of George Lucas, and it was an absolute mess all around, and we've even recently learned more about what went on behind the scenes, or what went wrong with Abrams and Johnson, which I'll try to talk more about in a video in the next day or two. Anyway, here, you may be someone who thinks that this is all wrong and unfair. You may want to point out the irony of wanting Kennedy fired because she fired someone else. But the calls for her firing have been there for years now. This is not a new thing, it's just all coming to a head at this point. And I think it's also important to point out that she was given a chance by the fans. No one wanted to see her fired until after The Last Jedi. If you go back before The Force Awakens, I'd argue the average fan didn't even know or care who the president of Lucasfilm even was. All they knew was George Lucas was gone. Even after that film, few people talked about her, mainly because generally it was well received, or at least fans were eager to see what comes next, what comes of all these mysteries. It was really only after The Last Jedi that people started to wonder who exactly is responsible for all this. That's when Kennedy started to become a villain in certain parts of the fanbase. That's when people started to question what was the most important thing to her, making great Star Wars movies or pushing her own agendas. And if it wasn't the former, if her top priority wasn't Star Wars, why was she running things? And why should I pay for Star Wars that isn't about Star Wars? And look, though I certainly think there is a much bigger conversation to be had here around cancel culture, hate speech, and all these things, and that it is more important than Star Wars itself, for the good of the franchise, for the hope of it healing someday and just being mostly about Star Wars again, it is time for her to go, and we can only hope Disney truly realizes this, and that they can convince her to go, despite what they said about her recently. Though who knows, maybe it won't take much convincing. Maybe Kennedy is tired of all this and is ready to go herself. And I know this is where some will say, well, Star Wars has always been political. Lucas himself based it off of this or that, so this is nothing new. As if being a real-world political battleground was the original intent of George Lucas. They also conveniently forget or don't know that at first he tried to get the rights to Flash Gordon. He wanted to make something similar to the serialized shows of his youth, which Star Wars is still based on. It's still set up like one of those old kid shows from the 50s. They then also conveniently forget that Lucas has said on multiple occasions that the main goal of Star Wars was to bring spirituality back to the young, to create a modern-day myth that borrowed from our own recent history. For those who don't know, Lucas loves history and has said that yes, historical events shaped Star Wars, along with his appreciation for mythology, that it is a blend of both. But what he's never said is he was trying to make a political statement or point with Star Wars, beyond showing how easily democracies can fall, or that they don't actually fall so much as they're given away, that people give up their own freedom in the name of security, that democracies often end with thunderous applause, as Padme said in Episode 3. But above all else, he's always said that Star Wars is for kids. That was even the advice he gave to Jon Favreau in regards to The Mandalorian, to always remember who the real audience is. And honestly, I think the real audience for Star Wars is the kid in us all. And I think new leadership is needed at Lucasfilm who truly understands and believes in that philosophy, who wants to do all they can to make Star Wars just about Star Wars, to have it be based more on the mythology it originally created than to adapt to the modern times to be a statement about today. Which is not to say it cannot evolve in some ways, that we can't have a more diverse cast of characters or people playing those characters. Only that, especially nowadays, most people don't turn to entertainment to be a reflection and or reminder of the real world. They turn to escape that. And I fully believe that this is what Star Wars should be. It should be an escape, and it certainly shouldn't be a political battleground. Well, I'm getting off topic, so that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about all this. Should Disney get rid of Kathleen Kennedy? And if so, who should take her place? And do you think she'll play ball and walk away nicely? Is she maybe tired of all this herself? Or will she hold on with all her might until the bitter end? And thanks to the Gina Carano incident, does this actually give her the ability to do so? Whatever you think, leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.